Daniel pulled my boarding pass out of my hand and gave the confirmed seat to the woman he had once planned to marry. Chloe has panic attacks when she flies alone. He announced loud enough for half the gate to hear. You can take the evening flight, Evelyn. Stop making everything about you. My father was going into emergency surgery in less than 4 hours around us. Strangers looked away with the embarrassed silence people used when they believed they were witnessing an ordinary marital argument. Chloe stood beside my husband in a cream coat, one hand pressed delicately to her chest. The boarding pass in her fingers carried the seat number that had been mine 10 minutes earlier. 2A, the same seat I had surrendered in my previous life. The same flight I had watched leave while thunder rolled over Chicago. And every later departure to Boston was canceled. The same choice that had cost me my father's final conscious hour. For one terrible second, I could smell rain on broken glass. I could feel the steering wheel slipping beneath my hands 3 years later, when I had been driving through a storm to recover the documents Daniel had hidden from me. I remembered headlights coming through the windshield. I remembered understanding too late that the man I had protected had spent years arranging my grief for his own benefit. Then the airport came back into focus. Gate C-17, April 18th for 17 in the afternoon. I was 32 again. Daniel mistook my silence for surrender. There's a flight at 9:40. He said, I already put you on standby. You can lead my confirmed reservation. I changed the booking. There's a difference. Chloe touched his arm. Daniel, maybe I should stay. I don't want Evelyn to think I'm taking something that belongs to her. She looked at me while she said it. Daniel immediately tightened his hand around hers. No, you need me. In my previous life, those 3 words had broken something inside me. This time, they clarified everything. I opened the airline application and took screenshots of the canceled reservation, the time of the change, and the device that had accessed my account, Daniel's tablet, logged in at 3:51 p.m., 17 minutes after the hospital called us. What are you doing? He asked, saving the record. His expression hardened. Don't turn this into evidence. I looked at him for the first time. You already did. I walked to the gate desk and asked the supervisor to add a written note confirming that my reservation had been altered without my presence. Her name tag read Meyer Ortiz. She glanced from me to Daniel, then lowered her voice. Mrs. Mercer, your husband used the corporate travel authorization attached to the booking. He released your seat and assigned the opening to Ms. Bennett. Please preserve the transaction history. Daniel came up behind me. Evelyn, enough. I removed my wedding ring. I did not throw it. I did not make a speech. I placed it inside the zippered pocket of my handbag where it could no longer decide anything for me. Then I called a number I had not used in 6 years. Maris Vega answered on the second ring. Hartwell Flight Operations. This is Evelyn Hart. There was a brief silence. Then her voice changed. Ms. Hart, what do you need? Prepare Hartwell 7 for Boston. Daniel laughed behind me. He believed I was bluffing because I had refused to step onto a private aircraft since my mother died. He believed fear made a person permanently weak. He believed my place beside him would always remain empty until he chose to return it. I looked through the terminal glass at the darkening runway. I need wheels up in 30 minutes, I said, and removed Daniel Mercer from every flight authorization connected to my name. An airport operations vehicle collected me 12 minutes later. Its flashing amber light reflected across the terminal windows as it moved along the service road toward the private aviation building on the western side of the airport through the tinted glass. I could still see Daniel standing at gate C-17. He had his phone pressed to his ear. Mine was vibrating inside my bag. I turned it off. That single movement felt more final than taking off my ring for 6 years. Daniel had known where I was at every hour. We had shared locations because he said it made marriage safer. In practice, he checked mine whenever I was late and disabled his own whenever Chloe came into town. I had called that compromise. Now I called it what it was. Control moving in only one direction. Marisol waited for me outside the Hartwell Aviation Lounge. She was in her late 50s with silver threaded through her dark hair and the same direct gaze I remembered from childhood. She had overseen my family's flights since before I was old enough to reach the cabin windows. When I stepped out of the vehicle, She did not ask why I had returned. She looked at my empty left hand, then at my face. "The aircraft is fueled," she said. "Captain Reeves has filed the fastest available route. Weather is building west of the city, so we need to depart before the ground stop." My throat tightened beyond the glass doors. Hartwell 7 waited under the gray afternoon sky. It was not the same aircraft in which my mother had died. I knew that rationally. The accident had involved a charter company, a maintenance failure, and decisions made by people who had later gone to prison. Fear did not care about rational distinctions. The Gulf Stream on the tarmac became every unanswered call from that winter morning. Every photograph of twisted metal, every condolence spoken by someone who had no idea what to say. My feet stopped. Maricel stood beside me without touching me. "You do not have to prove anything by boarding," she said. "I'm not proving anything." "Then why are you going?" "Because my father had asked for me. Because in my previous life, I had sat beneath a departure board while the word canceled appeared beside every Boston flight, because Daniel had held me while I cried and whispered that there had been nothing I could have done, because 3 years later, I had found a message he sent Chloe that night. She missed it. Thomas won't be able to warn her now. I looked at the aircraft again. "I'm going because somebody tried to decide where I was allowed to be." Maricel nodded once. "That is a better reason." The crew had removed every unnecessary sound from the cabin. No music, no television, no open bottle of champagne, waiting like a celebration. I fastened my seat belt with both hands. Captain Reeves came back before the door closed. He was broad-shouldered, calm, and careful not to stand over me. "Ms. Hart, we have a clear window. Flight time is approximately 1 hour and 50 minutes. There may be light turbulence during the climb. Tell me before it happens." "I will. And if I ask you to turn around, we turn around." The certainty of his answer steadied me. Daniel had spent years making every boundary sound unreasonable. The crew treated my request as information. As the aircraft began to taxi, my phone lit up again. I had turned off calls, not the device itself. 23 messages waited. "Daniel, what exactly are you doing?" "Daniel? Chloe is crying because of the scene you caused." "Daniel, you cannot use a private jet just to punish me." "Daniel, call me before you embarrass both of us." "Chloe, I am so sorry. I never wanted this." "Chloe, Daniel is under a lot of pressure." "Chloe, please do not make him choose between us." That final message almost made me laugh. He had already chosen what Chloe did. Not understand was that I had finally chosen too. I took screenshots and forwarded them to Nora Hale. Nora and I had met during my first year managing the Hartwell Foundation. She had represented us in a dispute involving a contractor who believed a warm smile excused falsified invoices. After she dismantled his story in 20 minutes, we became friends in my previous life. I had not called her until most of the damage was complete this time. I sent one sentence: "I need you to preserve everything and prepare for a divorce." Her response arrived before takeoff. "Do not delete anything. Do not sign anything. Do not discuss finances with Daniel without me present. I am calling you when you land." The aircraft turned onto the runway. My palms went cold. The engines rose for 8 years. I had avoided this moment. I had flown commercially because large cabins made the sky feel less personal. I had taken trains when possible. I had skipped family trips and told people I was busy. Daniel had always praised my simplicity in public in private. He had called my fear inconvenient whenever it disrupted his plans. Chloe, by contrast, was allowed to be afraid of anything. Crowds, airports, being alone, seeing Daniel with his wife. Her fear made her precious. Mine made me difficult. The aircraft accelerated. I closed my eyes and pressed my hand against the leather seat. "I am here," I whispered. The wheels left the ground. Nothing shattered. No alarm sounded. Chicago dropped beneath us in silver lines and dark blocks. The clouds opened, and for several seconds the entire city looked small enough to fit beneath my hand. I had expected terror instead. Beneath it I found anger. Clean anger. Useful anger. By the time Captain Reeves announced that we had reached cruising altitude, I could breathe again. I opened my laptop. The travel account showed the exact sequence. 3:34 p.m., Boston General Hospital called me. 3:39 p.m. Daniel accessed our shared travel profile. 3:43 p.m. He searched for seats on flight. 3:51 p.m. He released passenger Evelyn Mercer from seat 2A. 3:52 p.m. Passenger Chloe Bennett was added to the corporate booking. 3:55 p.m. Evelyn Mercer was placed on standby for the 9:40 p.m. flight. He had not acted during a panic at the gate. He had done it calmly before telling me. I forwarded the audit record to Nora and copied Mayor Ortiz's contact information from the note she had provided. Then I accessed the Hartwell family portal my father had given Daniel limited authorization to, years earlier, to communicate with our property managers during a renovation project. The authorization was supposed to expire after 6 months. It was still active. My heart began to beat harder in my previous life. I had assumed the broader access came after my father died. I had believed I signed it during those blurred weeks of grief. Perhaps Daniel had begun earlier. I revoked the authorization. Then I changed my portal password, removed his trusted devices, and requested a complete access report. A warning appeared. This action may affect pending third-party requests. I clicked Continue. 3 requests disappeared from the dashboard. 1 involved Mercer Italia, Daniel's firm. 1 involved Margaret Mercer's residential lease guarantee. The 3rd involved Solace House LLC, Chloe's company. I stared at the screen until the letters stopped moving. Nora called through the aircraft system. What happened at the airport? She asked. I told her. She did not interrupt when I finished. She said, was Daniel aware of Thomas's condition before he changed the reservation? Yes. Did he know you were listed as medical proxy? Yes. Did he know there were no other confirmed seats? Yes. Then do not let him reduce this to a marital disagreement. Intent matters. I found 3 pending requests in the family portal. What kind? I described them. Do not open any attached documents, she said. Download the access log and leave the files untouched. We need metadata preserved. I did exactly that. Evelyn, she continued, are you safe? The question startled me. Daniel had never hit me. He did not shout often. He preferred disappointment, silence, and the quiet rearrangement of facts until I apologized for responding to something he had done. I'm on the plane. That is not what I asked. I looked at the clouds. I don't know yet. Then assume you need distance until we know more. The aircraft descended into Boston beneath a violet evening sky. There was turbulence, just as Captain Reeves had warned. My fingers locked around the armrest, but I did not ask him to turn around when we landed. I cried, not dramatically. No sobbing. Tears simply slid down my face while the wheels struck the runway and held. Marisol handed me a tissue when the cabin door opened. You boarded, she said. I almost didn't. That still counts. A car took me directly to Boston General. The surgical floor smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. Sophie Grant, my father's chief of staff, met me outside the elevators. Her usually perfect braid had loosened and her eyes were red. You made it. How is he? Stable for now. Dr. Shah wants to operate as soon as the second surgical team arrives. He refused additional sedation until he saw you. I followed her through 2 security doors. My father looked smaller than he had that morning. Thomas Hart had built companies, argued with senators, and once dismissed an entire room of consultants because none of them could explain their own charts. Seeing him beneath a white hospital blanket felt impossible. His eyes opened when I approached. Evie, I took his hand. I'm here. He glanced past me. Daniel on a commercial flight. Why aren't you with him? The answer rose in my throat because he gave my seat away because he had planned for me not to arrive. Because I had already lived through the night in which this room became empty. I forced my voice to remain steady. He made another choice. My father studied me even in pain. He had always been difficult to deceive. You flew Hartwell 7. Yes, you hate that plane. I hated being kept away more. Something in his expression softened. Dr. Amir Shah entered with a tablet and explained the procedure. The tear in my father's aorta was serious but contained. They needed to operate immediately. He understood the risk. I need 2 minutes with my daughter. He said when the doctor left. He tightened his fingers around mine. Open the second drawer in my study desk when this is over. Dad, listen. Daniel came to see me last month. I went still. He said you were overwhelmed. He suggested I authorize him to handle several trust matters if my health declined. What matters? Credit guarantees, property votes, foundation approvals. Did you sign anything? No. Relief lasted less than a second. He had documents prepared. My father continued. One of them included Solace House, Chloe's company. His eyes sharpened. You know about her. I know enough. I told him I would speak to you. He asked me not to upset you until after the Boston project closed. The monitors beside him continued their quiet rhythm in my previous life. He had died without telling me. Daniel had known he intended to warn me. The plane ticket had never been only about sitting beside Chloe. I revoked his portal access. I said, good. I'm also filing for divorce. My father closed his eyes briefly when he opened them. He did not ask whether I was certain. He did not tell me marriage required patience. He said, make sure it is your decision, not mine. It is. Then do it thoroughly. The surgical team returned. I walked beside his bed until the red line on the floor marked the place where families had to stop. I'll be here when you wake up, I told him. He gave me the faintest smile. You had better be. You brought the fast plane. The doors closed. I stood in the corridor alone for less than 5 minutes before the elevators opened. Daniel stepped out first. Chloe was holding his arm. They had arrived with matching carry-on bags, as though they were checking into a resort instead of entering a surgical floor. Daniel saw me and stopped for a moment. Genuine shock crossed his face. You're here. Yes. How? Chloe's gaze moved to the window where the Hartwell car waited below. Her mouth tightened. Daniel understood. You actually took the jet. My father is in surgery. You could have told me. You knew where I needed to be. He lowered his voice. You made me look like an idiot at the airport. I looked at Chloe. She was still holding his arm. You managed that without my help. Chloe released him. I only came because Daniel thought I shouldn't fly alone. This is a restricted family floor. Her eyes widened. I'm not trying to intrude. Then don't. Daniel stepped between us. Chloe came all this way. You are not sending her downstairs like a stranger. She is a stranger to my father. She is important to me. The words hung in the corridor in my previous life. I had heard them as a threat this time. I heard a definition. I pressed the security button beside the nurse's station. A hospital officer approached. Ms. Bennett is not an approved visitor. I said, please escort her to the public waiting area. Daniel stared at me. You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious. The officer turned to Chloe. She looked at Daniel, waiting for him to overrule me. He could not. This floor did not belong to him. Neither did I. Chloe's face changed as the officer led her away. The fragile expression disappeared first. What remained was cold and furious. Daniel waited until the elevator doors closed. What is wrong with you? My father could die tonight and you are using that to punish Chloe. I almost admired the speed with which he rearranged reality. You can lead my seat after the hospital called. She was having a panic attack. You did it 17 minutes before we reached the gate. His face went blank. I continued. I have the account record. I preserved the change history. The gate supervisor documented what you did. You're collecting evidence against your husband. I am protecting myself from him. He stared at my bare hand. Where is your ring? Safe. Put it back on. No. The word came easily. Perhaps because I had already said it in another life and no one had listened. Perhaps because this time I was listening to myself. Daniel looked past me toward the surgical doors. Your father filled your head with something. He told me you asked for trust authority. His expression shifted only slightly. It was enough. That was a practical conversation. He said about Chloe's company. She has a legitimate business. Then why did it need my family's guarantee? You do not understand the financing structure. I understand that you discussed my assets with my father without telling me. I was trying to build something for us. For us, for our future. Chloe's company was our future. He rubbed a hand over his face. You are emotional. We can discuss this after Thomas is stable. That sentence worked on me last time. He frowned. What does that mean? Before I could answer, Sophie approached with a folder in her hand. Evelyn, I found the email. Mr. Hart asked me to preserve. She glanced at Daniel, the one from the outside auditor. Daniel's shoulder stiffened. Sophie handed it to me. The subject line read, an authorized collateral inquiry. Mercer Italia and Solace House LLC. Below it was a warning from the auditor. Someone using Daniel's credentials had attempted to determine how much credit could be borrowed against assets in the Hartwell Family Trust. The request had been made 6 weeks earlier. I looked up. Daniel had gone pale for the first time since the airport. He understood that I had arrived before he could control the room. My father survived the surgery at 2:13 in the morning. Dr. Shah came through the double doors and removed her surgical cap. The repair went as planned, she said. The next 24 hours are critical, but he is stable. My knees nearly gave way. Sophie caught my elbow in my previous life. Those doors had opened at 1:47. A different surgeon had walked toward me with his hands folded. I had arrived 6 minutes too late. Daniel had held me while I collapsed. He had told me my father knew I loved him. He had answered questions for me, signed forms for me, and guided me through the first weeks of grief with such practiced tenderness that I mistook control for care. Now my father was alive. Daniel stood across the waiting room, but I did not go to him. Chloe had returned from the public floor after midnight. She sat beside him with her head on his shoulder using the same cream coat as a blanket. When Dr. S.H. announced the successful surgery, Daniel crossed the room. Thank God, he said. Reaching for me, I stepped back. His hand closed around empty air. Evelyn, I'm going to the intensive care unit. We should go together. No. He looked toward the nurses and lowered his voice. Are you planning to behave like this all night? Yes. The answer startled him. Chloe stood. Maybe I should leave. Daniel turned immediately. You don't have a hotel. She did. I knew because I had received the charge notification from our joint card 40 minutes earlier. A suite at the Newbury Boston. $1,800 for 2 nights. Booked under Chloe Bennett. Paid with a Mercer household card that drew from an account I funded. I opened my banking application. The charge sat beside 3 others. Car service from the airport. Room service. A purchase at an airport boutique. I froze the card. Daniel's phone vibrated almost at once. He looked at the screen. What did you do? I stopped paying for her hotel. Chloe's cheeks colored. I was going to reimburse you. You did not ask me. Daniel said the card was shared. It is shared between my husband and me. Daniel stepped closer. Do not humiliate her over a hotel room. You used our household account to pay for another woman's suite while my father was in surgery. She came here because of me, then you pay. He stared at me. The checking account connected to his personal card held less than $4,000. I knew because I had deposited the money for 6 years. Daniel's income had gone into his business, his investments, and projects he considered important. Mine covered the mortgage, taxes, travel, insurance, his mother's apartment, and nearly every ordinary cost of our life. He called it efficient. I had called it partnership. Chloe slowly pulled out her own card. The gesture would have looked dignified if she had not waited until mine stopped working. Daniel followed me into the hallway. Unfreeze it. No, Chloe cannot afford that suite. Then she should choose a less expensive room. You are being vindictive. I am separating my money from your decisions. You cannot do that without discussing it with me. I just did. I entered the intensive care unit and left him outside. My father remained sedated through the morning while Sophie sat beside him. I met Nora in a private consultation room 2 floors below. She arrived wearing black trousers, a navy coat, and the expression she reserved for people who had underestimated paperwork. She hugged me once, then she placed 3 legal pads on the table. Start with the airport, she said. I described everything again, this time in exact order. Nora wrote down times, names, phrases, and the location of every conversation. When I mentioned my memory of the previous life, I stopped. I could not tell her I had died. Not yet. Instead, I said, I have reason to believe Daniel intended to keep me from reaching my father. What reason? I know what he does when I am grieving. Nora studied me, but she did not press. Then we prove what he did this time. We reviewed the audit email. The collateral inquiry had originated from an IP address assigned to Mercer Italia. Daniel's credentials had been used. The attached request named 2 potential beneficiaries, his architecture firm and Solace House. The total proposed credit facility was $48 million. Did you authorize this? Nora asked. No. Did Thomas? No. Has Daniel ever had signing authority over the Hartwell Trust? Only limited communication access during the Lakeview renovation. That is not financial authority. I revoked it last night. Good. Now we need to find out whether he represented it as more than it was. She opened another file. I ran a preliminary search on Solace House. The company has multiple overdue obligations. 2 former employees are suing for unpaid wages. There is also a pending claim from a resort partner in Colorado. Chloe told Daniel the company was expanding. Technically, debt can expand. Despite everything, I smiled. Nora slid a document toward me. This is a notice of preservation. Once Daniel receives it, he is legally required not to destroy records relevant to anticipated litigation. Send it today. Now she watched my face. Evelyn, once we begin, he will understand this is not a threat. It isn't. What do you want from the divorce? The question should have been complicated in my previous life. I had wanted apologies, explanations, proof that 6 years had not been a mistake. I had wanted Daniel to admit he loved me more. I had wanted Chloe to disappear so the marriage could return to something that had never existed. This time, I knew I want my name off every debt he created. I want access to my assets closed. I want the house protected. I want a complete financial accounting. And emotionally, I want him to stop having the right to ask where I am. Nora wrote that down too. We spent 6 hours reviewing accounts. The pattern emerged slowly because Daniel had never taken one enormous amount. He had taken comfort in pieces. $8,000 each month for Margaret's apartment. $12,000 for Mercer Italia's health insurance plan. $35,000 for a design competition in Copenhagen. $72,000 labeled as hospitality consulting paid to Solace House over 18 months. Another $140,000 transferred through a Mercer Italia vendor account. I clicked on the supporting invoices. Wellness consultation, executive retreat planning, brand environment research. Chloe had been billing my husband's firm for services no one could describe. My money paid the invoices. Do you want to stop the recurring transfers? Nora asked. My finger hovered over the screen. A familiar voice rose inside me. Daniel will be embarrassed. Margaret will panic. The employees may miss payroll. People will say you used money to control him. Then another memory came. Daniel sitting beside my hospital bed after a stress-induced collapse in my previous life. You cannot keep using money to punish everyone, he had said after I questioned a 6-figure transfer. I had apologized. 3 days later, he sent Chloe another payment. I selected every automatic transfer connected to Mercer Italia, Margaret Mercer, and Solace House. Cancel, cancel, cancel. The screen asked for confirmation. I clicked yes. I am not punishing anyone. I said I am ending payments I never agreed to make. Nora nodded. That distinction will matter. By the time my father woke, the first financial walls had begun to rise. His voice was weak, but his mind was clear. You look terrible, he whispered. So do you. Good. I would hate to be alone. I sat beside him and held a cup of ice chips while he told me where to find the second drawer key. The documents in his study included copies of Daniel's requests, handwritten notes from their conversation, and an email Thomas had drafted but never sent to me. Evie, I am concerned Daniel has begun treating your trust as if marriage gives him ownership. It does not. Love is not authorization. Please do not sign anything because you are afraid of appearing disloyal. I read the email 3 times. Love is not authorization. I wished I had understood that before dying once. Daniel returned to Chicago. 2 days later, I stayed in Boston until my father was moved out of intensive care. During that time, Nora filed the preservation notice, requested banking records, and prepared temporary separation papers. I also removed Daniel from our shared cloud account. That was how I discovered the hidden device. A tablet registered to our home network, continued syncing photographs after I changed the main password. It belonged to Daniel's old office setup, a device he claimed had broken the previous year. The tablet was active. Someone had used it the night before. Nora told me not to access it remotely. We document where it is and retrieve it lawfully from your property. She said the house on AIA Street had been mine before the marriage. My mother left it to me through a separate trust. Daniel and I renovated it together, but the title had never changed. I had offered to add his name after our 5th anniversary. He told me legal paperwork did not matter between people who trusted each other at the time. I had found that romantic. Now I wondered whether he knew the prenup made any voluntary transfer difficult to reverse. I returned to Chicago on Hartwell 7. The second flight was still frightening. It was not impossible. That mattered more. Nora accompanied me to the house along with a digital forensic specialist and a locksmith. Daniel had received notice that we would be collecting my personal and trust-related documents. He opened the front door before I reached it. You brought a lawyer. Yes, you could not even speak to me alone. No. His eyes moved toward Nora. This is a marriage, not a corporate dispute. Nora smiled without warmth. Then you should not have used corporate accounts to finance your girlfriend. She is not my girlfriend. A woman appeared at the top of the stairs. Chloe. She wore my gray cashmere cardigan. I had bought it in Edinburgh with my father the year before my wedding. Daniel knew that. Chloe folded her arms. I came because Daniel was not doing well. I looked at the overnight bag beside the stairs. You seem very committed to his recovery. Daniel stepped into my path. She stayed in the guest room. I did not ask. You are assuming the worst. I am observing what is in front of me. Chloe touched the sleeve of my cardigan. I spilled coffee on my blouse. Daniel said I could borrow this. Take it off. Her face changed. Excuse me. That belongs to me. It is a sweater. Then taking it off should not be difficult. Daniel's jaw tightened. Evelyn, you are not going to strip her in the hallway. Nora and I will wait in the study. Chloe can return my property and leave. This is my home too for the next 30 days. You have occupancy rights under the prenup. That does not give Chloe permission to stay here. He stared at me. You already reviewed the prenup. I reviewed everything. The confidence left his face for a moment. He had expected emotion. He had prepared for tears, rage, accusations, perhaps even a dramatic demand that he choose. He had not prepared for a timetable. Chloe came downstairs 15 minutes later wearing her own coat and carrying the folded cardigan. She handed it to me. I hope one day you realize Daniel was only trying to help me. I already realized he was trying to help you. She waited for more. There was none. As she passed, she whispered, you cannot keep a man with contracts. I looked at her. I'm not trying to keep him. For the first time, she seemed uncertain. The forensic specialist found the tablet inside a locked drawer in Daniel's office. Daniel claimed he had forgotten it was there. The specialist photographed the drawer, device, charger, and surrounding documents before sealing the tablet in an evidence bag. I collected my passport, birth certificate, trust records, jewelry inventory, medical proxy documents, and the letters my mother had written to me during college. Daniel followed me from room to room. How long are you going to drag this out? The separation notice gives you 30 days to obtain counsel. I do not want counsel. I want my wife to stop acting insane. Nora looked up from her notes. Use that word again and I will add it to the communication log. He ignored her. Evelyn, your father survived. You got there. Nothing happened. Everything in me became still. He truly believed harm only counted when the worst possible outcome occurred. You did not know he would survive. I knew the doctors were competent. You knew I might not reach him. You had other options. So did Chloe. She needed me. My father needed me. That is different. Yes, I said it is. He did not understand that I was agreeing for the last time that evening. Margaret Mercer demanded a family dinner. She called it an opportunity to clear the air. Nora advised me not to go. I went because Margaret had spent 6 years describing my financial support as Daniel's generosity. I wanted to hear what remained when the payments stopped. The dinner took place in Margaret's apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. I had paid the deposit. I paid the rent. I paid the building fees and the salary of the woman who cleaned twice a week. Margaret sat at the head of the table as if she had purchased the view herself. Daniel's younger brother, Ryan, attended with his wife, Lena. Both looked uncomfortable. Chloe was not invited, though Margaret referred to her repeatedly as that poor girl. You humiliated Daniel at a hospital. Margaret began. I prevented an unrelated visitor from entering a restricted surgical floor. You know what I mean? I usually do. Daniel gave me a warning look. Margaret continued. Marriage requires generosity. Daniel has supported your fears, your moods, and your obsession with your father's approval. I placed my napkin beside my plate. How has Daniel supported me? She blinked. Emotionally, specifically, this is not a courtroom. No, in a courtroom, claims require evidence. Ryan looked down to hide a reaction. Margaret's face tightened. My son gave you a normal life when your family made everything about money. The sentence landed exactly where it was meant to. Daniel had used it many times. He had rescued me from wealth. He had taught me how to be ordinary. He had loved me despite the inconvenience of my background. I opened the folder Nora had prepared. I paid the down payment on Daniel's first studio. Daniel went rigid. I paid the firm's rent for 19 months. I covered your apartment deposit, your monthly rent, your building fees, your insurance, and 4 vacations. Margaret's lips parted. I paid Ryan's emergency legal bill 3 years ago. Ryan looked up sharply. Daniel said he covered that he used a transfer from my personal account. Daniel spoke through his teeth. This is unnecessary. I also paid $212,000 to vendors connected to Chloe's company. Lena slowly set down her wine glass. Margaret looked at Daniel. What is she talking about? Evelyn handles our household finances. She is making normal expenses sound suspicious. I slid copies of the transfers across the table, then explained them normally. No one touched the food. Margaret flipped through the pages. Her expression changed when she saw the amount attached to her name. This cannot be right. It is exact. Daniel told me the apartment was part of his partnership compensation. Ryan stared at his brother. You told me the same thing about the legal bill. Daniel pushed back his chair. I was protecting your dignity with her money. Ryan asked. We are married. It is our money. I removed the final page from the folder. Our prenup says otherwise. Margaret looked at me. You would use a legal technicality against your husband. The legal agreement exists because my mother required it before she died. That silenced her for half a breath. Then she recovered. Your mother never trusted Daniel. My mother never met Daniel. Then your father poisoned her against the idea of marriage. My mother created the trust before I was 20. Daniel stood. Enough. I looked at him. The recurring transfers ended this morning. Margaret's hand stopped on the paper. What transfers? Rent, building fees, insurance, everything paid from my separate account. She turned to Daniel. You said it was secure for 5 years. It is, he said too quickly. I closed the folder. No, it isn't. Margaret's face drained of color. You cannot throw me out because of an argument at an airport. I am not throwing you out. I am declining to renew payments on a property I do not use and never agreed to support indefinitely. You are punishing his mother. I am giving your son the opportunity to pay the expenses he told you he was already paying. Daniel leaned across the table. You think this makes you powerful? No. I stood. It makes me finished. Outside the apartment, my phone rang. Nora, we found something. She said. I stepped away from the building in trance. What? A loan guarantee for $24 million. The borrower is Solace House. The guarantor is listed as the Evelyn Hart Separate Property Trust. I never signed that. I know how. The signature matches one on your 2023 tax authorization. Only 4 people had access to that encrypted file. My accountant Nora, my father, Daniel. The bank received the guarantee from an email registered to Mercer Italia. Nora said the document metadata shows it was created on Daniel's office computer. Traffic moved along Lakeshore Drive behind me in the apartment above. The lights glowed against the glass for years. I had believed I was looking at the life Daniel built. Now I understood. I had built it. He had simply been giving pieces away. The bank's compliance department occupied the 34th floor of a building where every surface looked designed to resist fingerprints. Nora sat beside me at a black conference table. Across from us were 2 investigators, an outside counsel, and a digital security analyst. The forged guarantee appeared on the screen. My name sat at the bottom in a graceful electronic signature. It looked authentic because it was authentic. Daniel had copied it from a document I signed 2 years earlier. The security analyst enlarged the metadata panel. The file was created at 11:42 p.m. on January 6th. He said the source computer was assigned to Mercer Italia. The document was then uploaded through a user account associated with Daniel Mercer. Was the guarantee approved? I asked. Not fully. The bank requested direct confirmation from the trust administrator. That confirmation never arrived. So no money was released, not under this guarantee. However, the document was used to obtain a temporary bridge extension from another lender. How much? $800,000. Nora leaned forward. Which lender? The outside counsel answered. Lake City Commercial. Did they verify the trust? They relied on the submitted package and an attorney opinion letter whose opinion and name appeared on the screen. The attorney was not connected to the Hartwell Trust. He represented Mercer Atelier. Daniel had built a small circle of people willing to assume he spoke for me. Perhaps some had been deceived. Others had seen my name and decided verification was unnecessary. I signed an affidavit denying authorization. Then I gave the bank permission to preserve and share relevant records with law enforcement if the internal investigation confirmed fraud. Nora watched me initial each page. You understand this may lead to criminal exposure for Daniel, she said quietly. Yes, you can still pursue only civil recovery. No, the investigator looked up. Nora continued, I need your answer on the record. I placed the pen on the table. He used my name to secure money for the woman he prioritized over me. He did it while representing himself as my husband and financial agent. If I minimize that because I married him, I am helping him do it again. The words did not shake. Neither did my hand. Proceed with every available remedy. After the meeting, I went to the Asda Street house for the scheduled property inventory. Daniel had hired his own attorney by then. He also had a public relations consultant. I knew because an article appeared that morning on a local society website. RS abandons husband during family medical crisis. The article described me as notoriously private and Daniel as a self-made architect who supported his wife through years of aviation. Related anxiety. It claimed I had used a private jet to stage a dramatic display of wealth. After becoming jealous of his longtime friend Chloe's social media post appeared beneath the article. A photograph from seat 2A. Her hand rested beside a glass of champagne. Daniel's sleeve was visible at the edge of the frame. The caption read, Grateful for the people who show up when fear becomes too heavy to carry alone. She did not mention that my father had been waiting for surgery. She did not mention that I had paid for the ticket. She did not mention that Daniel had canceled my reservation before telling me. The comments called her brave. They called me cold in my previous life. I would have written a response before breakfast. I would have explained every detail and begged strangers to understand my pain this time. I forwarded the post to Nora. Preserve this. Then I made coffee at the house. Daniel waited beside his attorney in the front room. Most of his belongings were already packed into labeled boxes. The sight hurt more than I expected. 6 years of marriage became suits in garment bags, architecture books in cartons, and a row of framed photographs facing the wall. Pain did not change my decision. That was new. Daniel watched me examine the inventory. You saw the article. Yes, I did not write it. Your consultant distributed the statement. His attorney shifted. Daniel looked irritated. You had me removed from the hospital floor. You froze cards while Chloe was stranded. You shut off my mother's housing payments without warning. I provided 30 days notice where required. You are hiding behind legal language. I am using accurate language. You want people to believe I stole from you. The bank believes you submitted a forged guarantee. His face changed. His attorney immediately spoke. My client will not discuss allegations under active review. Daniel ignored him. You went to the bank. I signed an affidavit. You are willing to destroy my career over a document that never funded. Lake City Commercial released $800,000 based on it. He looked at his attorney. That was answer enough. I walked toward the office where the forensic team had finished imaging the tablet. Daniel followed. Evelyn, listen to me. No, Chloe's company was failing. I was trying to protect jobs with my signature. I was going to tell you when after the funding closed. So after I became liable, you would have agreed. Then why forge it? Silence. His attorney told him to stop speaking. I opened the office cabinet and removed a box containing my mother's flight journals. Daniel leaned against the desk. You enjoyed making me small at the airport. I looked at him. That is what you think happened. You called a private jet in front of everyone. I called transportation. You wanted Chloe to see who you really were. No, I needed to reach my father. You could have taken the evening flight. The evening flight was canceled. He frowned. What? The storm grounded every Boston departure after 7 for the first time. He seemed to understand the consequence he had almost created. His expression softened. Then it is good you found another way. The casualness of it took my breath. He wanted credit for an outcome achieved in spite of him. You knew the weather was coming. I said I knew there might be delays. You still can lead my seat. Chloe was already panicking and you decided my fear did not matter. You had resources. You did not know I would use them. You always could. That sentence exposed more than he intended. He had taken my seat because he believed I could absorb the damage. My father could wait. My grief could be managed. My fear could be dismissed. My money could solve whatever problem remained. Chloe, meanwhile, had to be protected from every consequence. You're right. I said. He looked relieved. I did have resources. I lifted the box. You no longer have access to them. The Hartwell Foundation Gala took place 9 days later. Canceling it would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and disrupted grants for 12 partner organizations. I refused to let Daniel turn my father's illness into an excuse for me to disappear. Thomas was recovering at home in Boston. He watched the event through a secure live stream. The gala occupied the Grand Hall of the Field Museum. Blue light washed over the stone columns and suspended glass fixtures reflected like stars above the tables. I wore a black dress my mother had chosen years earlier. No wedding ring, no Mercer family necklace, only the small sapphire earrings my father gave me when I became foundation director. Sophie stood beside the stage with a tablet. Daniel is here, she said. Invited. No, Chloe with him. Of course. They entered through the main doors as photographers turned. Daniel wore the tuxedo I had bought for our 5th anniversary. Chloe wore silver and held his arm. It was not subtle. It was not meant to be. Daniel wanted a photograph that would make me react. Chloe wanted a room full of donors to believe she still belonged near Hartwell money. I continued greeting guests when they reached me. Daniel smiled for the cameras. We need to talk privately. No, do not create a scene. You arrived without an invitation. Chloe's company was listed as a wellness partner. Pending compliance review. No one informed us the partnership was canceled. You received notice yesterday. Chloe's smile trembled. The foundation cannot cancel a signed agreement because of your personal feelings. The agreement contains a financial disclosure clause. We disclosed everything. Then the review will be easy. Daniel's fingers closed around my elbow. Not hard enough to bruise. Hard enough to remind me how often he had guided me away from conversations he wanted to control. I looked down at his hand. He released me. 5 minutes, he said. The program begins in 3. You owe me a conversation. I owe you responses through counsel. A photographer moved closer. Daniel lowered his voice. People are beginning to think you are unstable. That was the purpose of the article. I told you I did not write it. You approved the quote. His face tightened. Chloe stepped forward. Evelyn, this public hostility is hurting Daniel. I looked at the cameras, then at her. You posted a photograph from the seat he took from me. Her cheeks flushed. It was a gratitude post. My father was being prepared for open-heart surgery. I did not know how serious it was. Daniel did. Daniel interrupted. This is not the place. You chose the place. The event director approached to say the ballroom was ready. I walked onto the stage. Daniel and Chloe remained near the front table. He believed I would follow the prepared program, a welcome speech, a video, a funding announcement. I delivered the welcome speech. Then I changed the screen. A copy of the Solace House Partnership Agreement appeared behind me. Before announcing this year's grants, I said, the foundation must address questions raised about one proposed partner. The room became quiet. Chloe stood. Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I continued. Solace House LLC was selected for preliminary support based on representations regarding financial stability, employee compensation, and independent financing. The screen changed. Overdue wage claims. The Colorado Resort lawsuit. Payments from Mercer Atelier. Payments originating from my separate account. A murmur moved through the room. Daniel approached the side of the stage. Turn it off, he said. I did not look at him. The foundation has also discovered that Solace House obtained a bridge loan by submitting a guarantee bearing my electronic signature. The forged document appeared. Chloe's face went white. I never saw that. She said. Daniel climbed the first stage step. Security moved between us. This is defamatory. He said. The document is under bank investigation. You are discussing an active matter publicly. I am explaining why foundation funds will not be transferred. The screen changed again. This time the airline account history appeared. 3:51 p.m. Evelyn Mercer removed from flight 4823. 52 p.m. Chloe Bennett added. I looked at the audience. Recent public statements have suggested I abandoned my husband during my father's medical crisis and used a private aircraft as an act of jealousy. No one moved. The account record shows that after learning my father required emergency surgery, Daniel Mercer used access connected to my travel profile to cancel my confirmed seat. He then assigned the opening to Ms. Bennett. Chloe shook her head. I did not ask him to cancel you. A voice came from the back of the room, but you used the seat. My Ortiz walked toward the stage. Nora had invited her after confirming she was willing to give a formal statement. She was dressed in a dark suit instead of her airline uniform. She stood beside the first row. I supervised the gate. She said. Mrs. Mercer objected as soon as she learned of the change. Mr. Mercer told her to take a later flight. He also asked staff not to reverse the assignment. Daniel stared at her. Maya continued. The later flight was canceled because of the storm. The room shifted, not dramatically. People simply stopped looking at me as though I needed to explain myself. They began looking at Daniel. That was the moment he lost control of the story. He turned toward me. You brought an airline employee to a charity event. I invited a witness. This is revenge. No. I looked at Chloe, then at him. This is disclosure. The foundation's compliance chair joined me on stage and formally announced the suspension of the Solace House partnership. Chloe's composure broke. You are destroying my company because your husband cared about me. Your company was already failing. You could have saved it. I was never asked. My signature was used instead. She looked at Daniel. You told me Evelyn approved the guarantee. Every face in the room turned toward him. Daniel spoke carefully. I told you the family was reviewing support. You said the money was secure. Chloe, you said after Thomas signed the authority. Evelyn would not interfere. The microphones captured every word. Daniel's attorney was not present to stop him from answering. My father never signed. I said. Chloe looked at me for the first time. Her anger was not directed at me. He said he had. Daniel stepped toward her. You are confused. No, I am not. The cameras flashed. Security escorted them from the hall separately. I finished the program. My voice shook only once. After the final grant announcement, the room stood, Not for the scandal, for the organizations receiving funding that mattered to me. I had not burned down my own work to expose Daniel. I had removed him from it at midnight after the final guests left. Nora met me in the museum office. The forensic report on Daniel's tablet lay open on her laptop. We recovered deleted messages. She said, "How many?" "Thousands." I sat. She scrolled to a conversation dated 6 weeks earlier. "Chloe Thomas is suspicious. Daniel, he will not have time to do much. Chloe, you said he was changing the trust documents. Daniel, only if Evelyn gets to him first. Chloe, she will fly as soon as the hospital calls. Daniel, not if I control the booking." My hands went numb. Nora scrolled farther. The date was April 18th, the day of the airport. 3:40 p.m. Daniel. I released her seat. "Chloe, she will be furious. Daniel, she always forgives me once she thinks she overreacted. Chloe, what if she takes the jet? Daniel, she has not stepped on one since her mother died. Chloe, and if Thomas does not make it, Daniel, then she will be too broken to question the documents." Another message followed Daniel: "As long as she misses this flight, she will sign anything when it is over." The museum office seemed to tilt. In my previous life, Daniel had known exactly what would happen. He had not merely chosen Chloe. He had chosen my absence. He had used my mother's death to predict that I would remain trapped at the airport. He had treated my father's possible death as a financial opportunity. Nora closed the laptop. "We can use this." I looked through the glass wall at the empty gala hall. The chairs were being folded. The flowers would be removed before sunrise. Every beautiful thing built for the evening was already becoming evidence that an evening had occurred and ended. "So will I said. Daniel arrived at mediation with 2 attorneys. I arrived with Nora and a banker's box. The conference room overlooked the Chicago River. Rain streaked the windows, turning the buildings outside into gray shadows for a moment. The weather pulled me backward. A highway headlights broken glass. I pressed my feet against the floor. This was not that night. I was not driving toward evidence. I had brought it with me. Daniel looked thinner than he had at the gala. His firm had placed him on temporary leave after the forged guarantee became public. 2 clients had suspended projects. His mother had moved to a smaller apartment. After discovering he could not cover the previous lease, Chloe had stopped answering his calls. None of that made him harmless. People were often most dangerous when consequences began to feel real. His lead attorney opened with a statement about reconciliation. "My client believes the marriage has suffered from miscommunication aggravated by extraordinary stress." Nora did not look up from her notes. "Your client can let his wife's emergency travel reservation," forged her signature, and attempted to borrow against her separate trust. Daniel's attorney continued as though she had not spoken. "He acknowledges poor judgment involving Ms. Bennett, but denies any intent to harm Mrs. Mercer or her father, Hart." I said. The attorney paused. "Excuse me. My name in this proceeding is Evelyn Hart. The petition to restore my legal surname has been filed." Daniel looked at me. "You could have told me. I just did. The mediator asked us to address property first." Daniel sought a share of the ASD, a street house based on marital improvements. He sought compensation for his strategic contribution to Hartwell projects. He also claimed an interest in the growth of certain trust assets because his professional advice had influenced their value. Nora placed the prenup on the table. Section 4 excludes the ASDA property, all Hartwell trust assets, and any appreciation derived from them. Section 7 states that unpaid informal advice creates no ownership interest. Daniel leaned toward me. "You would leave me with nothing. You have your income, your retirement accounts, your firm equity if the partnership allows you to retain it, and every personal asset listed in your name. My career has been damaged because of you. Your career has been damaged because a forged document came from your computer. You made it public. You used my name publicly first." The mediator raised a hand. "We will keep personal accusations focused on settlement relevance." Daniel pushed back in his chair. "Fine, then I want spousal support." Even his attorney turned slightly. Nora's eyebrows rose. "On what basis?" "I reduced my financial independence during the marriage." I almost laughed. He had earned more than I did in several years because my foundation salary was intentionally modest. He had simply chosen not to use his income for shared expenses. Nora opened the account summary. Mr. Mercer retained approximately 81 of his earned income in separate investments. While Mrs. Hart paid 92 of household expenses, the mediator read the numbers. Daniel's request for support disappeared before lunch. Then Nora introduced the forged guarantee. Daniel denied creating it. His attorney suggested an employee could have accessed his computer. Nora produced the login records. He claimed the password was known within the office. She produced a security log showing his key card entered the office at 10:58 p.m. and left at 12:17 a.m. He said he had been working late. She produced the source file copied from my encrypted tax folder. Only his authenticated home device had downloaded it. His attorney requested a break. Daniel followed me into the hallway. Nora moved between us. I want to speak to my wife. She is not your wife for the purpose of an unrecorded private discussion. Nora said he looked past her. Evelyn, you know I would never deliberately destroy you. I met his eyes. I know exactly what you are willing to risk. You are reading private messages without context. The context was my father's possible death. I was angry. You wrote them before we argued. Chloe pressured me. You changed the reservation. She was afraid. You copied my signature. I was going to repay the loan. You told her I would sign anything once my father died. His face tightened. That was a figure of speech. No, it was a plan. People passed at the end of the corridor. An assistant pushed a cart of bottled water into another conference room. The ordinary world continued around us. Daniel lowered his voice. I did not want Thomas to die. You wanted me not to reach him. I wanted time for what? To stabilize the financing before he turned you against me. My father did not turn me against you. He never believed I was good enough. He was correct about one thing. You believed marrying me gave you permission to use what belonged to me. I built our life with my money. I loved you. While planning for my grief, he looked away. That was the closest he had come to honesty. The second half of mediation began with Chloe Bennett entering the room. She had her own attorney. Daniel stared at her. What are you doing here? Her attorney answered, Mrs. Bennett is participating under a cooperation agreement related to the banking investigation. Daniel's face lost color. Chloe did not sit beside him. She sat at the far end of the table without the cream coat, the carefully trembling voice, and Daniel's hand around hers. She looked different, tired, angry, ordinary. The mediator reminded everyone that the session was confidential. Chloe admitted that Daniel promised Hartwell funding. She admitted he told her my father would eventually authorize him. She admitted Daniel had described me as emotionally dependent and likely to approve anything he presented after a family crisis. She denied knowing the signature was forged. Nora showed her a message. Chloe, Evelyn will never agree. While Thomas is alive, Daniel. Then we move before she is thinking clearly. Chloe stared at the screen. I thought he meant he would persuade her. You asked whether I might take the private jet. I said. Her gaze moved to me. Yes. You knew he was relying on my fear of flying. Yes. Did you know my father was waiting for surgery? Daniel said the doctors had time. That was not my question. She swallowed. Yes. Daniel struck the table with his palm. You are acting like I left her on the side of a road. She was at an international airport with money, staff, and options. Every person in the room went quiet. There it was again. His defense. I could afford the damage. Therefore, he had the right to cause it. Nora closed the folder. My client's resources do not reduce your client's intent. After mediation, the settlement gap narrowed. Not because Daniel felt remorse. Because his attorneys understood the evidence, he agreed to waive claims against my separate property, surrender any disputed access, and reimburse a portion of misused funds. The criminal and banking matters remained outside the divorce agreement. He refused to admit deliberate